All right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June 25th. This is our regular scheduled meeting of the Hutchinson Utilities Commission. First item on the agenda is the conflicts of interest. Need to be declared by the commissioners today?
Nope.
None.
Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 2A and B, the consent agenda. Approve the minutes and ratify the payment of the bills.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Don,
I'll second.
second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Item 3, approve the financial statements.
I don't have much today, as you can tell, everything's similar, but I did want to mention on the gas side, you'll see that the transportation number is way up. That's because last year we started changing the month we booked New Ulm. It's actually the month ahead. So that means last year for May, we did not book anything just to get caught up. So that's why it's only 98,000 last year and 171 this year. Just thought I'd mention that. That's all I had.
So year over year, not much change at all, just the timing.
Right.
Yeah, some of those, so with our contracts we have with natural gas, certain things we bill ahead. So like for the firm capacity, if you're renting space on the pipeline, we bill you in advance. So in June, we'll bill you for July's capacity. And then there's other things where we bill you in after the fact. So operating agreements and things like that, we bill you. So on some of our invoices, we're billing ahead and billing behind on the same invoice. So we said, let's get consistent on how we're approaching those types of customers moving forward. So we don't.
Last year we did only book 11 for New Ulm just to get
Correct.
caught up. Because it had always been booked the month we received the payment, rather than a month in advance.
Other things, just kind of quickly touch on. As Jerry mentioned, from year to date, through May, we're actually ahead of again last year. Kind of that trend is still continuing. Both usage is up on the electric side, year to date 2%. So getting back to, I wouldn't say back to where we were several years ago, but certainly better than we were the last year or two. And then on the gas side, our consumption's up just under 14%. Our industrial class is back up on that side. Couple of things, just looking at the electric division, our purchase power is up 327,000 year to date, 7%. Couple of things, just digging in a little bit more detail. Our wholesale, if you guys recall, with our 2025 budget, our wholesale power costs are going up on average about 4% from MRES. They're our wholesale supplier, so we can anticipate their projection is that their rates go up 4 or 5% a year now, the next 5 years. So part of those increased costs are the wholesale costs that we get from MRES, and then the other portion that's been an increase is the market purchases. So through May of last year, our average price of buying off the market was $22.45. This year it's $32.53. So that's up just under 45%. And that's probably more indicative where we probably will see kind of future months here in that $32 range, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. Last year was pretty low relative to where it had been historically. So I would say they're getting back into probably a little bit more in line with, on average, where we'd see. So all that 327,000, 134,000 came from just the increased price of buying off the market. 130,000 came from our wholesale suppliers, increased cost of their power. And then the other 63,000 roughly is just admin fees from MISO and true ups and things of that nature. So you can anticipate that continuing as we move forward. On the transmission side, that's up. It's just pertaining to our increased potentially load and our peak, and then also just the rates for GRE predominantly have been up this year over last year. So those are just kind of some things to point out on the kind of the power purchase side of things. On the PCA side of things, if you look at the balance sheet, both the rate stabilization funds are in a good position. If you notice on the electric side, we're in that $800,000 plus range. We typically haven't been there over the prior few years. So we do have money above our minimum threshold of $400,000. So we didn't have a power cost adjustment in May. We're not going to have one in June because we got enough money in that rate stabilization fund. Even if there was the ability or the need for us to pull money out, there won't be a power cost for June. And I don't necessarily anticipate one for July either. So From a customer standpoint, that's a good thing. I had budgeted 900,000 in revenue coming from that mechanism, and right now we're at 151,000 year to date, and I don't think we're gonna, if we make another 200,000 or 300,000, it's probably we're gonna be. So we're not gonna capture that revenue through the power cost adjustment, but what that's been displaced by is market sales. So we had increased market sales in April. We talked about last month on April 1st and 2nd. We had a good month in market sales with our generation, and we're also seeing that in June as well. Market prices are up in June. So that's a good thing that we're generating revenue from a different source and passing on a power cost adjustment. So that's a good thing on that side of things. So I don't anticipate us hitting that revenue on that side of things. And then on the gas side, we've touched a little bit on too. I did budget 900,000 in credits going back, and we're at 494,000 year to date. I do anticipate us hitting that mark. We're going to be giving back consistent credits. Our power cost of fuel and things, since we've hedged and we've gotten into prepaid deals, is well below the $5.25. So I do anticipate us continually adding credits back to the customer's bill over the next 3, 4, 5 months for sure. So we're still in a good position overall from a net income standpoint and a P&L standpoint. So those are all good things, and so those are just good things to watch on the rate stabilization fund, that we've got good balances in there. Otherwise, I think things were kind of moving as expected for May, from what I had noticed and what I was anticipating seeing. So, any questions on any of that information?
Nothing for me.
All right, thank you, Jeremy.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial statements are approved. Agenda item 4 is open forum. I don't see any new guests today, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, communication. City Administrator Matt's not here today, so we'll move into divisions. Again,
Yeah, little update on the Hutch sub project. Not much to update with this weather. Construction with the rain, just been pretty slow, so they're probably a couple weeks behind at this point. So today's not helping me do it. So, and we had our open house last week for the Wilmer Line project, and it was pretty good. Had a couple citizens, nobody, Hutchinson citizens had any issues. There was a couple people outside northwest of town had some comments and concerns, and but other than that, there wasn't maybe a couple dozen people there. Same with the Litchfield open house, about the same turnout they said. So other than that, now they'll take it back and those suggestions and comments, and either adjust the routes or go on from there.
yeah, it looked like it was all following highways for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You know, trying to eliminate some of those. Some of this was built in the 50s, and it went through swampland and across like Lake Erie access and right above the water, and just they're just trying to clean up some of that if they
Yeah.
can. So other than that, it follows the route mostly, the existing route.
yeah.
Just to touch on what Jeremy was talking about with June and generation. Been generating a lot this month with the temperatures, especially this last week. MISO prices have been not only high but sustained, so we've been running around the clock a lot. So we have, through yesterday, almost $800,000 in sales. And the flip side of that is that avoided about $500,000 in costs we would buy from MISO if we didn't have that generation. So should be a good month, like Jeremy was saying. So we're making it for 3 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour and selling it for 14 to 17 cents per kilowatt hour. So pretty good margin. Gas prices are favorable, so we're churning it out.
I got a call from the general manager up in Hibbing. They have excess generation too, and he's like, "What's going on with these markets here?" Because they're running around the clock too right now, which you typically aren't seeing yet. Typically, so yeah, there's the margins are squeezed down, and there's probably some generation offline, and so they're keeping sustained prices. So even people have excess generation that can generate and push power in the market are having some good days here in June.
And last weekend had to help.
Yep.
We get 100-degree weather in June all that often. So.
This weekend looks the same. Humid on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's good to have Unit 1 back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Mike would think so, but.
It seems a little less stressful.
Yeah, I know.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Yep, kind of like what Dan was saying too with the weather, our construction and even new development stuff's been kind of slowed this month. But on a good note, with the last two weather events we've had in June, it's nice to report we had one outage related to that weather. It was a small tree went into a little overhead line we have left in the very north part of town. So that was the only incident we had in the last two big storms, so that's good to know.
I mean, you can have 85-mile-an-hour winds, and that's it.
Yeah, it proves that underground pretty helps a lot.
Yeah.
That's good news.
I guess for the gas side, we have, of course, construction season, and we're getting into our summer maintenance, doing some painting and fixing things, calibrations, that kind of stuff. We did fly the pipeline last week, helicopter, and no issues were found, so that's good, always good. No sinkholes or anything showing up. And the last update I have is we have a little update on the river crossing project. We're moving ahead with that. Did talk to the state yesterday. The permit is half signed. Needs to be signed by 2 individuals. The one person is on vacation, but she was hoping she'd be in today and we would get it signed. And so she kind of assured me by middle of July we would have the permit in hand. So.
Okay.
And we're meeting with the contractor, boring contractor on Friday, so we'll have more information on that next time.
Good.
Just mentioned we met with a software vendor a couple of weeks ago and did a demo on all accounting and customer service software. So there's something to ponder in the future, I guess. Nothing imminent, possibly next year. That's all I have.
How old is the software you're on now?
Oh, 7 years.
7 years.
It's just, it was never meant for, they don't have very many electric or gas utilities. It's more of a city and water type software, so.
Yeah, we're gonna
Few
eventually,
issues.
we're gonna have to go to cloud-based, all the software systems are going to cloud-based, and we're on, on the server still, so we know eventually we're gonna have to, even if we stay on the existing system, we're gonna have to move to the cloud.
Which there's a cost to that too, is to stay with the existing, so kind of a good time to look at other vendors.
Other alternatives.
All right, human resources.
Just catching up on filing and some miscellaneous things and project.
On paper.
Are you fully staffed?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Item D, legal.
Nothing today.
All right, thank you. Back to you, Jeremy.
Not a whole lot other than what I sent you for a business update. So, again, just gonna reiterate, working on a lot of the different contracts and trying to get some of those things, kind of moving down the path a little further so I can bring some things back in front of the board here in the next couple months for some consideration. Did mention that we did finalize the next era capacity contract that you guys approved last month. That was finished and confirmed by the counterparty with NextEra, so we did get the confirmation of that being done. So that's will be put in place and be ready to go. And I believe this month in June starts our other NextEra contract, I think for 20 megawatts or 20 megawatts. So that's starting with them. Otherwise, the only other piece I would just mention is next Friday is July 4th, so the offices will be closed as most people will be on holidays. So just wanted to mention that too for the viewership and customers watching. So that's all I have. Any questions on any of the business updates that I sent you guys?
Seem like some really good projects that you're working
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, we can just keep them moving forward, and it just takes time, to kind of work through that stuff, but it's a good one, so.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. Agenda item 6A is policies, a couple to review, and 6B, it looks like we have 2 or 3 to make changes to.
Yep, and all the ones that are needing approval are just removing the word director.
I'll make a motion to approve the policy changes.
Motion by Kathy,
Second.
second by Tom, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy changes are approved. Item 7, unfinished business, we have none. We'll move on to item 8, new business. Approve requisition 010270, closed interval survey. Looks like Byron.
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad I got to meet you all last month so that I could come this month and ask for.
Yeah, like, why wait?
Didn't have to do that, yeah. I tried to push it off till next time. So a close interval survey is basically a company comes in and checks our cathodic protection or our ability to keep our pipeline from rusting. I kind of wrote up a little write up here on explaining how it works and when we do it. We're getting very high raised eyebrows when we tell people we've never done it. Usually, typically when they put a pipeline in, they do a baseline study, and then if you have issues, you can go back and check it and compare it to your initial baseline, but we don't even have a baseline. So this would be our first assessment of that. Basically, the company comes out, they actually walk all 20 miles of the pipe. They have 2 meters. 1 meter must be in the ground at all times. So they walk the whole line, take readings all 20 miles on foot. They do kind of an inspection because they're walking over it. If there's any issues, sinkholes, they do all kinds of inspecting. But they'll do this survey, they walk the 20 miles, and then they keep the data, tell us if we have any issues. We do have test stations every road crossing, which is typically about a mile or a mile and a half apart. So we are taking readings there, and we feel we have good readings, but in between that, we have no idea. And kind of like I told Jeremy, it's when you're 40 and 50 years old, you got to go to the doctor and get physical. They make you do tests to prove that there's nothing wrong with you, and that's kind of what this is we're just trying to do a physical check on our pipeline. By splitting it up 20 miles, that way it's every 5 years. You do a portion of it because it's very costly to do that. So that was our plan, is to kind of break it up every 5 years, do this, and then start over and compare. If we have any issues, we can go back and check it. But we did meet with Lake Superior this week. Yeah, they're very shocked. We've never done this. They were asking for our old data. We said we don't have any. And so they're a very good company. They ask a lot of questions, and they're willing to let us come out and work with them and watch them and kind of teach us what they're doing too. So sorry for the long explanation, but that's.
Oh, that's all right.
That's a good question.
Which 20-mile stretch are they going to start with?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to start at far end and work this
Tremont?
Tremont, yes. So, we don't, like I said, we don't feel we have any issue areas, so we just figured we'd start on the south end and work our way this way. So.
And part of the aerial, the flying, is get the visual. Hey, is there any things that look like there's leakage or erosion or whatever? But some of this is more of disturbances in the ground with the pole, the anodes and the metering and electrical current issues or things on the pipeline, the steel, things like that could cause corrosion, just like we do in town with the cathodic protection and the distribution system. So I thought it was important that we do start creating a baseline. It's not a new asset anymore. It's 2 decades old, and it's been underground, and things shift over time, and sediment shifts and rock shift, and somewhere where the pipeline is going is through valleys and down by New Ulm and things, and so we want to make sure nothing's been damaged or dented, or we get readings that cause some concern for us with the high pressure that pipeline's under. So.
Another part of the survey is they do a depth of cover, so they will take a reading and they'll tell us how much cover we have over the entire 20 miles they walk, so we know how much dirt is up top of us. We think we know, but again, with erosion and farming practices and who knows what happens, we have an accurate reading of that. So.
Is this something we bid out annually for the next 4 years and after this?
We'll bring that up next meeting. No, but yeah, it is something we're going to have to start putting in the budget to do every year. And like I said, we'll do the next 20 miles north of where we end up and continue on. And then once we get the whole line done, then we'll start over, or we'll decide if we have a portion we want to check more thorough. Then once we get started, once we get our baseline, I should say, then we can pick and choose where we want to go next. It's kind of the industry standard is you do a 5th of year line. A lot of companies do 200 miles a year or 100 miles a year. We can't afford that, so we're going to try and do the 1/5 of the year, 1/5 of the line. So. Again, we don't have any problems, but this is an easy way to prove to auditors and anybody that wants to know.
Sure.
Here's the data, we got it.
That's current data.
And kind of the best practice to do it.
Does this have any effect on bonding?
No, this is really, to me, it kind of comes under regulatory things, making sure that, hey, we have sound records and baseline data that we can speak to, the assets that we have, that they're being protected, that we've been maintaining them, nor the proper federal standards, federal and state standards. So again, because something like this, it's underground, we've got, it's by test, we've got test stations that give us readings about where maybe there's some electricity, current disturbances, things like that, but we don't have it completely along the entire pipeline test stations. And so this will give us another baseline data of, hey, are we getting a misread somewhere here, or in between the two test stations, are we getting some disturbance or some read? Again, you have visual inspections. That's why we fly the pipeline. And we've upped that from typically annually to every semi-annually now, to make sure as things are getting developed along the pipeline, as different practices have taken place in a lot of the what I call the agricultural land, which is where a lot of our pipeline is. That we're managing our pipeline. We're out down there checking in those sorts of things. This is just another baseline data that we can then speak to when the MinOps comes out or FIMS comes out and says, hey, where's your pipeline been compared to where it is now? And we'll be able to have data as we move forward. And if it comes across that we have problem areas or discrepancies in the reads that we're currently getting off of our test stations relative to what this says, then those are things that we would have to address, so that we're maintaining and staying on top of the transmission pipeline, which are regulated by the federal government. MinOps is kind of the state agency that enforces it, which our audits will be coming up here in a few months and some of that stuff. So, but I think it's prudent for us to start budgeting some of this on an annual basis, because to me it's just a cost of operating the transmission line asset that we got to maintain it, and stay on top of it, and know what that pipeline looks like underground, and so we don't have issues. So.
The cost of this to find a problem before it becomes a problem has got to be much less than if
Correct.
it was an after the fact issue.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that expensive for what you're getting out of it.
Does happen, lawsuits or anything like that, for sure.
2/3 of the vehicle.
Correct, yeah, makes sense.
All right, anybody care to make a motion to approve that?
Make a motion to approve 010270.
Motion by Troy,
I'll second.
second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Requisition is approved. Item 8B is to approve requisition 010278, the generator number 1 transformer radiator repair.
Yeah, our Unit 1 transformer, our step-up transformer, has some issues with the radiators. They're rusting, corroding, and there's also some insulator things we have to do to that. But we're looking to get this approved now, with the understanding that it's going to take time to line up the repair. As Dan mentioned, that unit's running a lot right now, and we have some other things with our Hutch sub. We'll have to coordinate that shutdown. It is going to be about a 2-week process, so we're hoping to get it approved today and then start the planning process, and hope to get it done sometime this fall. And then, we'll keep you informed if it gets pushed back due to operating or other issues, but that's what we're trying to get taken care of on that transformer.
Okay.
So once it gets sent in, it's fully down until it comes back.
Yeah, once they get removed, yep, then it's down until they get returned. And that's why we're trying to line up with the company to remove them, and then the repair company, so that it's a quick, they get them, they're working on them right away, then they're returning them. So we're hoping at that 2-week minimum or 2-week maximum. So we're not taking out of service, then going, okay, it's sitting in there. We don't want what happened to you, one sitting down there for 8 months. So.
And shooting for a shoulder area of the year.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. But we kind of get this process taken care of so we can start the planning.
That sounds good.
I'll make a motion to approve requisition 10278.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That requisition is approved. That looks like that's it. One last thing to do is to adjourn. Anybody care to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Troy, second.
Fastest motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think we have a majority.
I saw you.
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.